Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into a fascinating chapter of the Swayamvara Parva and turning it into a high-stakes ancient stakeout. We're going to reconstruct a midnight espionage mission that literally holds the key to one of the most famous marriages in epic literature. No fluff today, just the raw facts straight from the source text, piecing together this incredible puzzle. So let's dive into the absolute panic currently consuming King Drupada. Imagine being in his shoes right now. He's just seen his daughter, Krishna, who we usually know as Draupadi, won in this massive grand archery contest. But the guys who won her, they don't look like royalty at all. They look like wandering ascetics, completely dressed in rags. The king is absolutely frantic for intelligence, and that burning question, who did my daughter just marry, is the spark for the entire covert operation we're about to break down. To get some answers, the Panchala prince, Dhrishtadyumna, decides to take matters into his own hands. He goes full stealth mode, discreetly following these mysterious victors as they walk away with his sister. To make sure he isn't spotted, the text specifically notes that he sends away all of his attendants. He's flying completely solo, tracking them all the way to a very humble potter's house. Once there, he tucks himself away in the shadows, totally unknown to the men he's staking out. Part 1. The Prince in Hiding. Secret Stakeout. Picture the scene of this ancient undercover operation. The spy watches from the dark as these men, who are, spoiler alert, the mighty Pandavas in disguise, come back to the potter's house. They've just wrapped up their evening round of what the text calls their eleemosynary round. That's just a really fancy way of saying they were out begging for alms. And what do with their meager haul? They cheerfully hand every single piece over to Yudhishthira. To anyone watching, they look exactly like what they're pretending to be, lowly, devout beggars with zero clue they're being watched. Moving to part 2, a very unequal dinner, dividing the alms. Now dinner time rolls around and Kunti's house rules are fascinatingly strict. First, the matriarch orders Draupadi to set aside a portion for the gods, the brahmanas, and any potential guests. But then, she commands a wildly unequal division of the leftovers. She tells her to divide the rest into 2 halves. One entire half goes to just one person. The remaining half is then split into 6 parts for the other 4 brothers, Kunti herself, and the new bride Draupadi. So, why does one brother Bhima get exactly half of the remaining food? Well, Kunti explains it perfectly in the text. She says he's a strong youth, quote, equal unto a king of elephants, and this hero always eats much. You have to imagine our spy in the shadows taking serious mental notes here. These so-called beggars have a guy among them with the appetite and the sheer physical presence of a war elephant. Definitely not your average ascetic. Section 3, Warriors in Disguise. Clues before sleep. After they eat, the spy watches the group get ready for sleep. The sleeping arrangement is incredibly specific. Sahadeva spreads a bed of kusa grass right on the ground. Each hero lays down a deer skin. They lie down with their heads pointing south. Kunti actually positions herself along the line of their heads, while the princess Drupada lies along their feet as a quote-unquote nether pillow. Now, even though she's a princess lying at their feet on a floor of grass, the text is super clear that she felt no grief in her heart, nor did she think disrespectfully of these men. She clearly senses there's something extraordinary about them. And this is where the cover gets completely blown. Think about the crazy contrast here. On the outside, they look like the humblest beggars in the world, sleeping on grass, wearing rough deer skins. But in the pitch dark, our spy is listening to their conversations, and they definitely aren't whispering about quiet, ascetic life. They're talking about celestial cars, devastating weapons, war elephants, swords, arrows, and battle axes. The text says they were talking like men who lead armies. At this point, in the mind of the spy, the mystery is solved. Part 4. The spy reports back. Morning intelligence. The sun finally comes up, and Dhrishtadyumna has heard way more than enough to know these guys are not wandering monks. As soon as morning breaks, he slips out of his hiding spot and basically sprints back to the palace in great haste. He has to relay all these bizarre, amazing contradictions from the potter's house to his dad, King Drupada. And remember, the king has spent all night deeply saddened, completely agonizing over the fate of his newly wedded daughter. Which brings us to Section 5, A Father's Frantic Questions. King Drupada's fear. Drupada's reaction here is just incredibly intense. When the prince walks in, the king doesn't even wait for a proper briefing before firing off these frantic questions. It's a fascinating window into the past because his panic completely exposes the massive class anxieties and the ultra-strict social hierarchy of the ancient world. He is literally terrified that someone of mean descent has taken his royal daughter, equating that social disaster to having a dirty foot placed upon his head. He keeps spiraling, agonizing over whether the ceremonial wreath of flowers was essentially thrown away on a graveyard, which is his highly dramatic metaphor for a bad social match. He begs to know if a Kshatriya of high birth or a Brahmana obtained her. It perfectly illustrates how ancient texts use a father's panic to highlight societal norms and the terrifying fear of losing status. He is caught in an absolute nightmare of social uncertainty. And then King Drupada reveals his ultimate desperate hope. He asks, was it Partha, meaning Arjuna, that took up the bow and shot the mark? Even though the Pandavas are presumed dead by the rest of the world, Drupada is holding on to this tiny flicker of hope that the incredible archer in beggar's clothes was the legendary Arjuna all along. Will his royal wishes actually be answered when his spy son finally gets a word in? It's a centuries-old cliffhanger that proves ancient politics were just as thrilling as any modern spy novel. So, what do you think happened next? Keep questioning what's hiding in the shadows of history, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.